After almost 3 months of beta testing, Vapi finally released the workflow productive version, and it's a really powerful feature. Today we will go through 3 practical examples to understand in depth this great feature. We will learn how to use a multilingual agent. This means that the agent can pivot and switch the language based on the customer input. We also are going to create a complex agent ideal for business that have strong qualification processes. And finally, we're going to integrate that into a real web application so you can steal this use case and start marketing it to your potential users. Let's start with a multilingual agent. Here, it's a simple appointment setter agent that will handle English and Spanish customers, ideal for countries like USA, let's say. So how this is breakdown is, instead of having a system prompt for the whole assistant, the workflow break down assistants into multiple pieces called nodes. So each node has a small system prompt that is specified for that part of the conversation. For example, at the start, of course, the agent will present itself, and in this case, will ask the language that the users want to have a conversation. If it's English, we have the rest of the flow in English. And if it's in Spanish, we will keep building it here in the Spanish version of the workflow. How this multilingual logic works? It's pretty simple. As I said, the whole workflow is split into small specific nodes, and each node has its own model settings. So we can set every setting that we had in normal agents, but for only this part of the conversation. For example, here we're starting with a voice provider of Vapi and DeepGram. DeepGram is a pretty cool multilingual speech-to-text engine. So basically what's happening here is that the agent will present themselves and ask in which language the user wants to continue. And here we have conditions. Based on what happened on that node, Vapi will know which transition must make. If the user said that prefers to English, perfect. That's when this transition will be executed and we will continue the flow in English. But if the user said that it wants to speak in Spanish, we're going to transition through this node. And here we are configuring everything in Spanish, not only the system prompt and the interactions, but also the voice settings. Here we're using Antonio voice within Azure voice providers, and we are still using DeepGram because, as I said, it's a very good multilingual language transcriber, but we're setting Espanol here as language. So let's give it a try. Okay, this is a pretty common error. We need to always add a first message in the first node. So let's try now.
Hi, I'm Riley from Wellness Partners. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. And you?
Thank you for asking. I'm here to assist you. Would you like to continue in English or Spanish?
Let's do Spanish, please.
Perfecto, sigamos en español entonces. ¿Quieres reservar una cita, modificar o cancelar?
Quiero modificar una cita.
Perfecto, sigamos.
Okay, so that's how we can switch languages on the run. Of course, there's a lot of better voices in Spanish than that, but that's a whole different topic. And if you would like me to cover that in the next video, just let me know in the comments. Okay, and the rest of the flow will continue in English if we selected English. That's the main point of this part of the video, multilingual switch. And that's basically how it works. So let's go to point 2, how to create a multi-prompt agent with a most complex scenario for businesses. Here, we're going to create an HR candidate qualification agent. HRI agents have a lot of candidates that are seeking for a job. And today with AI resume generators and a lot of tools like that, they are drawn by the amount of resumes and candidates that they are getting in. So these kind of tools are a lifesaver for them. And this is a simplified version of an HR candidate qualification agent that we built for one of our customers. Okay, so let's dive in. What the HR agent is trying to do is to only get their human HR managers and technical interviewers with candidates that are actually worth it. So here we're going to do a quick screening. So the first transition, it's if the user is busy. If the user is busy but is interested in having this screening call, we will ask him when we can reschedule this call. So we're going to ask them their preferred date and time. And once we have all that info from the users, we're going to create an API request. API requests are the most powerful tool within workflows because we can control exactly when we want to call our backend, NAN, or make automations. Basically here we're going to send a post request to our backend. It's really a good idea always to add an authorization header so we can make sure that it's actually the BAPI workflow who is making this request. Also, we're going to send these properties to our backend. In this scenario, I'm using a mixed version of NAN and our API, so this is accessible for everyone. Basically, this webhook catches the workflow, then that is sending the same information to our backend. And our backend is doing all the database logic. First, it checks if we have the authorization token, if the authorization token is correct. And in this case, if the user wants to reschedule the call, we are going to create in our DB a new call for them in the time they prefer to. Okay, let's go back to the workflow. In that case, after that, we will just thank them for the time and end the call. But here is the most interesting part. If the user is actually interested in the position, we are going to start playing a little bit more with dynamic variables. As I said, there's a lot of variety within roles. So what happened here is that different roles will have different qualification processes. In this case, as I said, this is a simplified version. So what we're doing is let's do some screening questions. And we are using the skills as variables, so we can have more flexibility within the different roles. Then we are just asking standard questions in the HR processes, like why are they looking to change their job and why they see themselves in this position. If they don't have the relevant skills for this position, we are going to tell them that they might not be the best fit for this position, but we will have them in count for future searches. So after that, we will just end the call. And if they're actually indeed qualified, because they have the required experience. In this case, and only in this case, we are going to move to the next step and actually book a call with one of our human technical interviewers. We're going to gather the information, we're going to gather their email, and we're going to gather the date when they want to have this call. Now that we have gathered these two things, we can do again the same thing, an API request that is going to hit our backend, and we're going to send the extracted variables from the previous node. In this case, the scheduled dates, and just using these curly brackets with the same name of the extracted variables here. That's how we're going to use that information as the value that we're going to send to the backend. Okay, having that said, let's give it a try. Before making a call here in the BAPI dashboard, we can set the dynamic variables that we use in our nodes. So let's give it a try.
Hello, do you have some time to discuss about your application at Google Cloud?
Yeah, I have some time.
Perfect. Let's do some quick screening questions. Do you have experience with React and infrastructure?
Yeah, I have experience with React and have some infrastructure knowledge. That's correct.
Great. Why are you looking to change your job?
Because my current contract is about to end.
Got it. And what interests you about this position?
I love working in products that have a big impact in people's lives.
Perfect, it seems. You are a great fit for this position.
Awesome. That sounds great.
Let's schedule a meeting with one of our agents. Could you share your email and a good date and time for you?
Yeah, my email is thomas@gmail.com, and
Thank you, Thomas.
a good fit would be June 20th at 10 a.m.
please hold on. Perfect, a call was booked. See you in the next step. And good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for taking the time to chat today. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Okay, so we actually were qualified in this example. And if we go to the call logs, we can see that everything went right. We have all the logs here, all the messages. And here we have all the tool calls and everything that happened. So basically what happened in our end is that this was a meeting type of rescheduling. So we actually scheduled the meeting with the candidate email, and we are storing the call ID. So then in our database, we can match this call with this customer. And maybe we can have a web portal. So the actual human agent, before going to this call, can hear the recording of this call before hopping in the actual meeting of the technical interview. So this is pretty nice, but how we can actually get these kind of implementations to the real world? And that's is how we go to the next point. Let's say that we built this simple web app for our HR customer. And here we have the listing of all the customers that actually uploaded their resume and applied for open positions. So let's say this candidate makes sense. So let's execute this screening call for her. Here I'm getting, hello? Yes. I like to really impact people. Okay. Yeah, I have that. And that's how we actually connected this web app with this workflow that books real meetings with our technical interviewers. This is a completely functional system that you can grab and start building it and selling it to your potential customers. So as I said, this is a very simplified version of this kind of systems, because when you're dealing with real customers, they have a lot more of specifications and custom business rules. And that's where the real challenges are, building customized systems for your customers' needs. And that's the point that where you guys need to focus on. So to recap here, we created two workflows. One multilingual workflow, one complex qualification workflow with a bunch of API requests. Here we have everything that we need to debug it and monitor the performance of our agents, and integrate all this within a web app that can be integrated with NetN, egg.com, or in my case, a Node.js server that is linked with the customer's calendar and the technical recruiter's calendar. And that's how we can leverage the power of Vapi workflows. So if you need help building something like this, please drop it in the comments or hop in our Discord community, and I will be pleased to discuss about this kind of solutions. Having that said, thank you very much for watching the video. See you in the next one.